Stop asking why they hurt you and start asking why you allowed it. You think it's them. You believe they're the ones who caused all your pain, your heartbreak, your sleepless nights. No, it's you. You allowed it. You handed them the power. You showed them how to treat you, and they followed your lead. Every time you begged for their attention, you whispered that you weren't worth more than this. Now they think you're so cheap, so desperate, that you'll keep crawling back, no matter how much they tear you apart. But let me tell you something. No more. Not until we're done here. Not until we show you the truth, the reality you've been too blind to see because you're drunk on the illusion of love. You're holding on to someone who doesn't even deserve to be in the same sentence as the word love. We're going to break that illusion for you, piece by piece, until there's nothing left to beg for. Before we start tearing the mask off this fantasy, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. Someone out there needs this wake-up call, so make sure you share it with them. Imagine being handcuffed in a room with no walls. You're free to walk away, to leave, to escape, but you don't. Instead, you sit there, pulling on the chains, begging the person who put them on you to take them off. That's what begging for love feels like. Handcuffs you could slip out of at any moment, but you don't because you think their permission is the key. The truth is, they've been watching you struggle, and begging keeps them in control. They know you won't leave. They've convinced you that freedom isn't yours to take, and every time you cry, plead, or grovel for their love, they tighten the cuffs just a little more. But here's the kicker: the cuffs were never locked. You've been holding yourself prisoner this entire time, waiting for someone else to set you free. Do you know what begging says to someone? It says, "I need you more than I need myself." It says, "Your validation matters more than my dignity." It's an unspoken permission slip for them to treat you like an option while you treat them like a prize. Look around. How many stories have you seen of people begging their exes to stay, only to be abandoned again? There's a post on a breakup forum. "I begged her to take me back, and she did, but now she treats me even worse." Or the man who begged his girlfriend not to leave, only to find out she'd moved on to someone else within weeks. This is the harsh reality. Begging doesn't make them love you, it makes them lose respect for you. You can't force someone to see your worth, and the more you try, the more invisible you become. Even someone as iconic as Princess Diana faced this. She once said of her marriage to Prince Charles, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." She knew she wasn't getting the love and respect she deserved, and while she fought for the relationship, she eventually stopped begging. She walked away, and in doing so she became a symbol of grace, dignity, and self-respect, a legacy far greater than the love she once chased. That's the power of walking away, the power of refusing to beg. Here's why they think you'll never stop. You've shown them, you've trained them to believe that no matter what they do, you'll still be there. You've made their love seem like a drug you can't live without, and now they believe they're the dealer holding all the power. But what happens when you stop buying what they're selling? What happens when you show them that their love isn't worth the price of your dignity? I'll tell you what happens. Their world falls apart. Their ego collapses. The power they thought they had over you disappears, and all they're left with is the emptiness of their own arrogance. This isn't just about what they've done to you, it's about what you've allowed. Today, we're going to rip apart the lies, the illusions, and the chains you've placed on yourself. By the end of this, you'll walk away with your head held high and your dignity intact. But first, I need you to affirm this with me. I choose freedom. And hey, don't just stop here. Drop it in the comments. I choose freedom. Show them. Show yourself. Let the world know you're done begging, done chasing, and done giving your power away. Let's dive in. Number 1. You can't get what doesn't want to be yours. You can't force a river to flow toward you when its current runs in the opposite direction. Let's stop lying to ourselves. You've been chasing something that was never yours to begin with, trying to hold on to someone who was never holding on to you. Every effort, every sacrifice, every late-night text, asking for clarity, it was all for nothing because you can't get what doesn't want to be yours. And that's not just on them, it's on you. Deep down, you knew. You saw the signs, the half-hearted efforts, the broken promises, the way they always made you feel like you were asking for too much when all you wanted was the bare minimum. They didn't hold on because they didn't want to, and yet you kept running after them like a dog chasing a car, desperate for something that would never stop for you. But here's the brutal truth you've been avoiding. If they wanted you, you wouldn't have to beg for it. You wouldn't have to convince them, negotiate your worth, or prove that you were good enough. People don't discard what they value. They don't let go of what they truly want. The very fact that you had to fight so hard for their attention, their affection, or their time should have told you everything you needed to know. Begging didn't make them stay. It made them leave faster. Here's what desperation does. It makes you look like you're willing to settle for anything. And when you settle for anything, people give you exactly that, nothing. They gave you crumbs because you showed them you'd accept crumbs. They gave you their worst because you made it clear you'd still be there, clinging to the scraps, hoping for more. Think about it. Have you ever seen someone beg their way into love? It doesn't happen. Love doesn't respond to desperation. It responds to respect. And you can't respect someone who's throwing themselves at your feet, hoping you'll notice their value. Love isn't found in begging, pleading, or chasing. It's found in mutual effort, respect, and desire. If it's not mutual, it's not love. Imagine this. You're holding a bird in your hands, gripping it so tightly, afraid it will fly away, that you start crushing its wings. That's what chasing someone who doesn't want you looks like. You're holding on so desperately that you're destroying it and yourself in the process. They didn't fly away because they didn't see your worth. They flew away because your grip was suffocating. Here's the hard truth you need to face. You can't make someone want you. You can't love them into staying. You can't convince them that you're the one for them if they've already decided you're not. And the more you try, the more you lose yourself in the process. You start bending, shrinking, becoming someone you're not just to fit into their version of what they want. And even then, it's never enough because they don't want you, not the real you. Look around. The world is full of stories of people chasing what wasn't meant for them. They gave their all, only to be left with nothing. There's a story I read recently where someone said, "I did everything for him. I changed my hair, my job, my entire personality to make him happy, and he still left." That's what happens when you chase something that doesn't want to be caught. No matter how much you give, it will never be enough. But then there are the stories of those who stopped chasing, who let go, who walked away. Those are the people who found their strength, their worth, and their freedom. And guess what? That's when the right people came into their lives. The ones who didn't need to be convinced. The ones who saw their value without having to be begged. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control, their love, their attention, their commitment. It was always beyond your control, and the more you tried to control it, the more you enslaved yourself to it. Freedom starts when you let go. Let go of what isn't yours. Let go of the idea that you have to chase love or prove your worth. Let go of the belief that their approval defines you. Because here's the truth, the right love will never make you beg. It will never make you question your value. It will never feel like a fight you're constantly losing. Stop chasing what isn't chasing you. Stop holding on to what's already gone. The moment you let go is the moment you take your power back. They don't define your worth. You do. And if they couldn't see your value, that's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of them. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I let go. Say it, feel it, live it. It's time to stop chasing and start choosing yourself. Let's move forward. Number 2. Every apology was a lie you wanted to believe. An apology without change is just manipulation. Let's stop pretending their apologies ever meant anything. They weren't apologies. They were rehearsed lines meant to keep you hooked. Every "I'm sorry" was a reset button, a way to calm you down just enough so they could keep doing whatever they wanted. But here's the hard truth you've been avoiding. Every apology was a lie you wanted to believe. You wanted to believe them when they said they'd change, didn't you? You wanted to believe that this time would be different, that the pain would stop, that the cycle of hurt would end. But it never did it? Because their apologies weren't for you, they were for themselves. They weren't sorry for hurting you, they were sorry for the consequences of their actions. They weren't apologizing to make things better. They were apologizing to keep you around, and you let them. You let their words blind you to their actions. Every time they said, "I'm sorry," you ignored the fact that they kept doing the same thing over and over again. You told yourself, maybe this time they mean it, but deep down, you knew. You knew their apologies were empty, but you held on to them because the lie was easier to bear than the truth. They didn't care enough to change. Apologies without action are nothing more than manipulation. They're tools used to pull you back into the cycle of hope and disappointment. They're the sweet words that make you lower your guard, only to get hurt all over again. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." The same applies to relationships. Don't let someone argue their goodness through words. Make them show it. Think about the last time they apologized. Did anything change? Did their behavior improve? Or did things go right back to the way they were once the dust settled? That's the pattern, isn't it? They hurt you, they apologize, you forgive, and the cycle repeats. That's not love. That's not respect. That's a game, and you've been the one losing. Imagine being stuck in a revolving door. Every apology is like someone giving you a push, spinning you around and making you think you're moving forward. But you're not. You're just going in circles, exhausting yourself while they stand on the outside, watching you chase your own tail. The only way to stop the spinning is to step out of the door. Look around at the stories of people who finally stepped out, the ones who stopped believing the lies, who saw through the empty promises, and who decided enough was enough. There's a story I read where someone wrote, "He apologized every time he cheated, and I believed him every time. But after the 5th time, I realized his words meant nothing." That's the reality you need to face. Their apologies weren't mistakes, they were strategies. They weren't slip-ups, they were calculated. But don't get it twisted. This isn't about them. This is about you. You're the one who chose to believe the lie. You're the one who let their words outweigh their actions. You're the one who gave them chance after chance, hoping they'd finally wake up and see your worth. And that's where the real betrayal lies. Not in their lies, but in the lies you told yourself. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Their empty apologies were their choice, but your choice was believing them. Your choice was letting them back in when they hadn't earned it. But now you have a new choice, to stop listening to their words and start trusting their actions, or lack thereof. Here's the harsh truth. If someone is truly sorry, they don't just apologize, they change. They don't repeat the behavior that hurt you. They don't use "I'm sorry" as a band-aid for a wound they keep reopening. A real apology comes with accountability, growth, and a commitment to do better. If you haven't seen that, then what you've been given isn't an apology. It's manipulation disguised as remorse. Stop falling for it. Stop letting their words lull you back into a false sense of security. If their actions don't match their apologies, then their words are just noise. You deserve more than noise. You deserve someone who doesn't have to apologize over and over again because they get it right the first time. Let them keep their apologies. Let them live with the weight of their empty promises. You don't need their words to heal. You need your own strength. Stop waiting for them to change and start changing your own story. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I believe actions, not words. Say it, feel it, live it. It's time to leave the lies behind and step into the truth. Let's move forward. Number 3. The illusion of their importance was your creation. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Let's talk about the lie you've been telling yourself. The one where you put them on a pedestal so high they looked like a god in your life. You convinced yourself they were the best thing that ever happened to you, that without them you were incomplete. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. The illusion of their importance was your creation. They didn't place themselves there. You did. You built this image of them in your mind, sculpting them into someone they never were. Every time they disappointed you, every time they let you down, you smoothed over the cracks in the fantasy. You told yourself they were misunderstood, or maybe just scared of how much you loved them. You made excuses, twisted reality, and held on to the version of them you wanted to see, not the version they really were. The problem wasn't them, it was the illusion you created around them. You took their good moments, their sweet words, and their fleeting acts of kindness and turned them into a masterpiece in your mind. But here's the gut-punch reality. What you were holding on to wasn't them, it was a fantasy. And fantasies don't hold up under the weight of reality. Imagine a house built on sand. No matter how beautiful the walls are, no matter how grand the design, it crumbles the moment the tide comes in. That's what your relationship was, an illusion standing on an unstable foundation. You tried so hard to keep it standing, but it was never built to last. They didn't ask to be put on a pedestal. In fact, they probably enjoyed the power it gave them. Why wouldn't they? You handed it to them. You placed them above you, made them the center of your world, and taught them that their love was something you had to earn. And they took it, not because they deserved it, but because you let them. Here's the brutal truth. They were never as special as you made them out to be. Their importance in your life wasn't because of who they were, it was because of how you chose to see them. You gave them the starring role in your story, and they played the part because it was easy. But now it's time to rewrite the script. Look at the stories of people who've been through this. How many times have you heard someone say, "I can't believe I ever thought they were so amazing. Looking back, they were so ordinary." That's what happens when the illusion shatters. You start to see them for who they really are, not the flawless version you created in your mind, but the flawed, selfish, and sometimes downright unremarkable person they always were. Take Marilyn Monroe, for example. She once said, "I'm selfish, impatient, and a little insecure. I make mistakes. I'm out of control and at times hard to handle. But if you can't handle me at my worst, then you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best." She knew who she was, flaws and all. But how many people in her life tried to turn her into an illusion, an idea, rather than seeing the real person? The people who loved her for the fantasy always left when the reality didn't match up. That's exactly what you've been doing. You've been loving someone for who you wanted them to be, not who they really are. And the moment you see the truth, the pedestal crumbles, and you're left wondering why you ever put them up there in the first place. The Stoics remind us that suffering often comes from our perceptions, not reality. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Your suffering didn't come from them. It came from the importance you placed on them. You made them the source of your happiness, your worth, your identity. And when they couldn't live up to the fantasy, you felt shattered. But here's the good news. You built the illusion, and you can tear it down. You can stop seeing them as more than they are. You can stop holding on to a fantasy and start living in reality. And in reality, they're just a person, flawed, imperfect, and no longer worthy of the pedestal you built for them. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I see clearly. Say it. Feel it. Let it remind you that the illusion is gone, and the only thing left to build now is your own life on your own terms. Let's move forward. Number 4. Begging didn't show love, it showed fear. Fear is the chain that binds you to what you know you should let go. Let's stop pretending that every time you begged for their attention, pleaded for their love, or cried for them to stay, you were showing love. You were showing fear. You weren't driven by passion or devotion. You were driven by the terror of losing them, of being alone, of confronting the possibility that you weren't enough. That wasn't love. It was fear dressed up as desperation, and they saw it. Love doesn't look like groveling. Love doesn't sound like, "Please don't leave me." It doesn't feel like sacrificing your dignity just to keep someone in your life. Real love is mutual, grounded, and fearless. What you were doing wasn't about love. It was about clinging to the illusion that having them in your life, no matter the cost, was better than facing yourself without them. Begging is the ultimate betrayal, not of them, but of yourself. Every time you begged, you told yourself, "I can't do this on my own. I need them more than I need my self-respect." And they didn't stop. You did. They let you beg, let you cry, let you put yourself through hell because it gave them power. But let me tell you something. They didn't stay because you begged. They stayed because it fed their ego. When they left, it wasn't because you weren't good enough. It was because your fear was never going to keep them there. Imagine standing on a beach, holding on to a handful of sand. The harder you squeeze, the more the sand slips through your fingers. That's what fear does. The more you hold on, the more you lose. Begging didn't bring them closer. It pushed them further away. They didn't see your love in your tears. They saw weakness. They saw someone so terrified of being alone that they were willing to settle for the bare minimum, and they took advantage of it. Think about it. If they truly cared, why did you have to beg? Why did you have to prove your worth over and over again? Real love doesn't make you beg. It doesn't put you in a position where you feel like you're one misstep away from losing everything. The fact that you were begging at all should have been your first clue that this wasn't love. It was control. Fear doesn't bring people together. It creates a divide. Every time you begged, you were reinforcing the power dynamic. They were in control, and you were at their mercy. Begging wasn't an act of love. It was an act of surrender. And they let you surrender because it made them feel like they had something you didn't. Power. Take a moment to reflect. How many times did you beg for someone who didn't deserve you? How many nights did you cry, thinking that if you just showed them how much you cared, they'd finally stay? And how many times did they leave anyway? Begging wasn't the solution, it was the problem. Fear has a way of disguising itself as love. It tells you that you can't live without them, that losing them would be the end of your happiness. But here's the truth. Losing them isn't the end. It's the beginning of finding yourself. When you stop begging, you stop letting fear control you. Look at the stories around you. People who walked away from relationships where they begged and pleaded didn't just survive, they thrived. They found freedom in letting go, power in standing tall, and strength in choosing themselves over fear. That's the path you need to take. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "He who is free is he who can say no to what enslaves him." Begging enslaved you, fear enslaved you, and now it's time to say no. No to fear, no to desperation, no to the lie that you have to fight for what's meant to be freely given. They didn't leave because you weren't enough. They left because begging doesn't inspire respect. It doesn't build connection. It doesn't make them see your worth. But walking away, that forces them to see you in a whole new light. Not as someone desperate for their love, but as someone strong enough to love themselves. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I am fearless. Say it, believe it, because love doesn't beg, and neither do you. Let's move forward. Number 5. The Beggar's Funeral. You can't begin a new chapter if you keep rereading the old one. The version of you that begged, pleaded, and waited at their doorstep, that version is gone, dead, buried, finished. There's no resurrection, no turning back, and no apologies that can bring it back to life. They didn't just underestimate you, they buried themselves in the process. The day you stopped begging wasn't just the death of a weak version of you, it was the beginning of their biggest regret. Begging for love is like planting seeds in concrete. You water, nurture, and hope, but nothing grows, and yet you kept going. Why? Because you believed in the illusion they sold you. But here's the truth. You weren't watering a garden, you were digging your own grave. Imagine this. You're trapped in a dark, endless pit, clawing at the walls, screaming for someone at the top to throw you a rope. They hear you, they see you, but they stand there, watching, enjoying the sight of your desperation. Every tear you shed was another brick they laid, keeping you trapped. But the day you stopped begging, that was the day you built a ladder out of the very chains they used to bind you. Here's the hard truth you don't want to hear. Every time you begged, you wrote yourself as the villain in your own story. Begging wasn't love. It was self-betrayal. It was you telling yourself, their approval matters more than my self-respect. You gave them the pen and let them write your narrative, but the story they wrote wasn't about love. It was about power. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Replace man with yourself. Stop wasting time trying to prove your worth to someone who couldn't see it." Take Oprah Winfrey, for example. She was fired from her first television job because she was deemed unfit for TV. She didn't beg for another chance. She walked away and built her empire. Imagine if she'd stayed there, pleading for validation from people who couldn't see her worth. Her story would have ended before it began. That's the same choice you face now. You can beg for someone to see your value, or you can rise like Oprah and show them what they lost. You don't need their permission to thrive. When you begged, you were feeding their ego, building it into a fortress they thought would last forever. But when you stopped, it was like nailing the coffin shut. Their ego doesn't get to feed on your pain anymore. Your silence was the final nail, and now their arrogance is buried 6 feet under. They never saw it coming because they thought you'd stay. Why wouldn't they? You trained them to think you'd always come running back. Every text you sent, every tear you shed, every desperate "I miss you" was fuel for their pride. But here's where they messed up. They forgot that even the softest hearts have breaking points. They thought your love was endless, but love isn't supposed to hurt. Love doesn't beg. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." They thought you were foolish for begging, but the real fool is the one who lost you. The day you stopped begging wasn't just an end. it was a beginning. It was the day you rose from the ashes of their neglect, their manipulation, their arrogance. You became the phoenix they never saw coming. Begging is crawling but walking away. That's flying. You've handed them their own defeat. But this isn't just about them. It's about you. The beggar's funeral isn't just the death of what was. It's the birth of what will be. It's the day you finally understand that begging never had the power to bring you closer to love. In fact, it only pushed you further from yourself. Every act of pleading took you one step further from your dignity, and now it's time to reclaim it. Think about the people who didn't beg, the ones who walked away when they realized they weren't being valued, like Sandra Bullock, who endured public heartbreak when her marriage fell apart but never begged. She didn't grovel for her partner to stay. She turned inward, focused on her own growth, and became an even bigger icon of strength and grace. The world didn't pity her. It respected her. That's the kind of story you deserve to write for yourself. You've wasted enough time begging, hoping, and waiting for someone to see your worth. It's time to stop watering a dead garden and start planting seeds where they'll actually grow. You can't keep nurturing something that has no roots. Begging is like pouring water into a broken vase. It spills out, leaving you empty. But when you stop, you realize you were always capable of holding yourself together without them. This isn't just about leaving someone behind. It's about leaving behind the version of yourself that thought begging was love. It's about laying that person to rest and letting the stronger, wiser version of you rise in their place. Let them watch from the sidelines as you become everything they said you couldn't be. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I bury the past. Let this be the beginning of your new chapter, free from the chains of begging and full of the freedom to choose yourself. It's time to rise. Let's keep moving forward. Number 6. When the puppeteer loses control, you cannot enslave a mind that knows its worth. You think they were the problem, that they manipulated you, pulled your strings, and turned you into their puppet. No, it wasn't them. It was you. You handed them the strings. You gave them control, piece by piece. Every time you begged, every time you said, "Please don't leave me," they didn't take your power. You gave it away, and they used it because you let them. Puppeteers can only control what's tied to their strings, and for far too long, you were that puppet, dangling, twisting, moving to their rhythm. They called, and you ran. They pushed, and you fell. They ignored you, and you broke yourself trying to be seen. They didn't have to chase you because you were too busy chasing them. You gave them the perfect setup, a stage where they could sit back and watch you dance for their attention. Let's stop pretending this was love. Love doesn't make puppets. Love doesn't hold strings. Love doesn't need control. What you called love was dependency, a desperate attempt to hold on to someone who didn't care about your dignity. But here's the moment that changed everything, when you cut the strings. The second you stood up and said, "Enough," their power crumbled. Puppeteers don't exist without puppets, and the moment you stopped playing along, they lost everything. Imagine a puppeteer holding an empty stage. They're standing there, strings in hand, but there's nothing attached to them. They look ridiculous, don't they? That's them now. You've left them holding the pieces of a game they can't play anymore. Every time they try to pull you back, their strings snap in the air. You've outgrown their control. Let's not sugarcoat your part in this. You trained them to believe you'd stay. You taught them that no matter how badly they treated you, you'd still come running. Every tear you shed, every time you apologized for things that weren't your fault, every moment you begged them to care, you handed them another string. And they held on to those strings because it was easy. Why wouldn't they? You were giving them everything, but the second you walked away, everything changed. Their biggest mistake wasn't pulling the strings, it was thinking you wouldn't cut them. They thought they owned you, that your world revolved around them. But now they're realizing the truth. You were the one holding it all together. Without you, their show has no audience, no star, no meaning. This isn't about blaming them. It's about holding yourself accountable. You can't heal until you face the fact that you allowed this. You accepted the scraps they gave you, and you told yourself it was love. You let them control you because it felt safer than standing on your own. But now you're not that person anymore. Puppets don't grow wings, but you did. You've cut the strings, and now you're flying higher than they ever thought possible. Think about it. If they truly cared about you, why did they need to control you? Love isn't about control, it's about freedom. And the second you freed yourself, they had to face the reality that they never truly loved you. They loved the power they had over you. The version of you that danced to their tune no longer exists, and they're left clutching empty strings, wondering why the stage feels so quiet. Look at the stories all around you, the forums, the heartbreak groups, the real-life examples of people who begged and begged until they were nothing but shadows of themselves. There's a post I read where someone wrote, "I begged them to stay, and they did for a while, but every time they looked at me, I felt smaller." That's what begging does. It shrinks you. It teaches them that your love is a currency they can manipulate. But then there are the stories of those who walked away, those who said, "I'm done being your puppet." Look at the power in those stories. Look at how the people who left found themselves again, while the ones they left behind stayed stuck, confused, and powerless. That's you now, the one who walked away, the one who said, "You don't control me anymore." The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." Freedom isn't something anyone gives you. You take it. You take it when you stop letting someone else pull your strings. You take it when you choose yourself over their games. You take it when you realize you've been the one holding the power all along. This isn't just the end of their control. It's the beginning of your freedom. Let them sit in their confusion, holding strings that no longer connect to anything. Let them wonder how the puppet learned to walk on its own. You're not their entertainment anymore. You're not their backup plan, their safety net, their puppet. You're done being controlled. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I cut the strings. Say it, feel it, live it. Let's move forward, because the stage is yours now. Number 7. This time you choose yourself. The moment you start choosing yourself, the game is over for them. This is it. The moment everything changes. The moment you stop looking for validation from someone who couldn't even see your worth. The moment you stop begging, stop chasing, stop waiting for scraps of affection that should have been given freely. This time, you choose yourself. They thought they could keep you in the cycle. They thought they could keep you running in circles, desperate for their approval. But here's where they lose, because you're not in that game anymore. The second you decide to choose yourself, you leave them spinning in the dust of their own arrogance. Let's stop lying to ourselves. You stayed because you thought their love would fix something inside of you. You thought that if you could just make them see your worth, it would somehow make you whole. But here's the truth. No one can fill a void inside you except you. They weren't the solution, they were the distraction. And you let them distract you for too long. Imagine standing at a crossroads. One path leads to more of the same, more begging, more chasing, more heartbreak. The other path? That's the path where you choose yourself, where you take all the energy you wasted on them and pour it into building a life where their absence doesn't hurt, because you've filled it with your own strength, your own love, and your own purpose. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Every time you begged, every time you lowered your standards, every time you stayed in a situation that made you feel small, you were choosing them over yourself. You were choosing their comfort over your dignity. And now it's time to flip the script. Look around at the people who chose themselves. Think about the celebrities, the icons, the role models who walked away from toxic situations and built empires out of their pain. Rihanna didn't just survive a toxic relationship. She turned her pain into power and built a billion-dollar empire. She chose herself, and the world stood in awe. That's the kind of transformation you're capable of when you stop pouring energy into people who drain you and start investing in yourself. You owe them nothing, not another second of your time, not another tear, not another ounce of your energy. They took what they could, and now it's time to close the door. You don't beg for what you deserve. You demand it. And if they can't give it to you, you walk away without looking back. Choosing yourself means no longer settling for less than you deserve. It means setting boundaries and enforcing them. It means letting go of people who drain you no matter how much you think you love them. Because real love doesn't ask you to shrink yourself. Real love doesn't make you beg. And real love doesn't make you choose between your dignity and their approval. This time, you don't wait for their text. You don't sit by the phone hoping they'll realize what they lost. Because this time, their opinion of you doesn't matter. This time, the only opinion that matters is yours. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you choose yourself, you change the color of your thoughts. You stop thinking, "Why don't they love me?" and start thinking, "Why did I ever think I needed them?" That shift is where your power begins. This time, you focus on you. You put all that energy you wasted on them into yourself. You rebuild the confidence they tore down. You rediscover the passions you gave up to make them happy. You pour your heart into becoming the best version of yourself, not for them, but for you. The day you start choosing yourself is the day everything changes. It's the day they realize they lost the best thing they ever had. It's the day their power over you dissolves. It's the day you take your life back. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I choose me. Say it, believe it, live it. Because this time, you're not begging, you're not chasing, you're not waiting. This time, you're choosing yourself, and that's the final step. Let's move forward. This is it, the moment you take your power back. No more begging, no more chasing, no more wasting your energy on people who don't deserve you. You've seen the truth, and now you're unstoppable. Choosing yourself isn't just a decision, it's a revolution. It's you reclaiming your worth, your dignity, your life. Let them regret losing you. Let them sit in the silence you left behind. You're done being their option. You are your own priority. If this message resonated with you, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs this wake-up call. Let's keep growing together.